As someone who's always looking for ways to make my favorite dishes more satisfying and well-balanced, I couldn't wait to put a twist on a classic green chicken tamales. I'm not going to change the flavors or ingredients because there's something truly comforting about the taste that's filled with memories. Recently, I've been experimenting with ways to pack a tamal with protein and fiber. They stay true to tradition, perfectly tender, flavorful, and just a bit lighter. For the protein, we're gonna be using 6 pounds of skin-on, bone-in chicken thighs, and I'm just going to season them generously with kosher salt. I did remove some of that excess skin. Now hit it with some freshly ground black pepper. These thighs look beautiful. Now flip them over so you can hit the other side with the seasoning, salt and pepper. Take that chicken over to the stove, place a large pot over medium-high heat, add a little bit of oil in there. Once it's hot, brown the thighs in batches, skin side first, then flip it so you get an even color all around. During this process, avoid overcrowding that pot. Once it is all brown, carefully pour in 10 cups of water and place all of that chicken back into the pot. While this reaches a boil, I'm gonna add 1 onion, and I just cut it in half. A whole head of garlic, I sliced that end off to expose all of those garlic cloves. Half a teaspoon of whole allspice, 2 bay leaves, and half of a bunch of cilantro. I think we barely made it. Carefully remove some of those impurities that may rise to the top. I've lowered the heat to medium-low. It needs to reach a gentle simmer, then cover and cook for about 20 to 25 minutes or until that chicken is fully cooked. I'm gonna preheat the oven to high broil. For the salsa, I've got 1 pound of tomatillos, half a white onion, 6 large unpeeled garlic cloves, and 2 chiles de árbol. You can do serranos, jalapeños, it is up to you. Jalapeños are a little bit on the mild side, so keep that in mind. And 4 poblanos. I'm just gonna cut them in half so that I can remove those seeds and also the stem. Just know that the full printable recipe is going to be available on villacocina.com. That link is gonna be down in the description area. While you're at it, don't forget to give us a like. We appreciate that very much. Take that white onion and just slice it into thin wedges. Make sure everything is neatly arranged on that lined sheet pan. Give it a quick drizzle of oil. Target every single ingredient. Place it on the top 3rd rack in the oven and roast them for about 10 to 15 minutes or until they have blackened on the surface. Remove those thighs and place them in a separate container that's heat-proof. We're gonna allow it to cool down before we can work with it. Definitely don't wanna burn ourselves. What's left behind is that broth we're gonna use to flavor the entire batch of tamales. Just go ahead and strain it. I'm going to allow the roasted ingredients to cool down. Meanwhile, I'm gonna shred the chicken. Remove that skin first and just toss it out. We don't need it. The same thing's gonna happen with the bones. All we need is that delicious tender meat. Okay, take those roasted ingredients and peel the skin from the poblano peppers before we put everything into that blender. Remove the stem from the chiles de árbol. Peel the garlic cloves. Add the remainder, which is the onion and the tomatillos. Also add 4 whole cloves, half a teaspoon of whole cumin seeds, 1 teaspoon of aromatic, incredible Mexican oregano, plus the fiber part, 4 cups of well-packed spinach leaves. And believe me, you're not gonna be able to taste the spinach, but it's gonna add so much. If you don't have a big enough blender, you can always do this in batches. Also do half a bunch of fresh cilantro. Just break it apart. It smells so good. Do 2 cups of the chicken broth. Cover and blend until it is completely smooth. Reserve 2 cups of the broth, of the sauce. I don't know what I'm thinking. By the way, the idea of adding spinach into the sauce really came from Mexican green mole, so it's definitely an ingredient you can make useful in your kitchen. Place a large pot over medium heat and drizzle in a couple of tablespoons of avocado oil. This is nice and hot. I'm actually gonna lower that heat to medium-low and add in 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. Stir it in, saute it for about a minute. What this is going to do to the sauce is bring a nice balance through the sweetness tomato paste releases. It is really, really good flavors to add into your filling. I can really smell this right now, and look at that color the oil just got infused with. Carefully pour in your green salsa. I'm gonna add 1 cup of that chicken broth. Swirl it in so that we can get the remainder of that sauce. Stir everything to combine, allow those flavors to marry into each other. Also, this sauce has to come up to a gentle simmer, so if you need to crank up the heat, that is completely fine. This right here is optional, but it adds so much flavor, which is fresh epazote. Add 1 to 2 leaves depending on how big they are. This one's pretty big, so it's just gonna get 1. I'm just gonna let this simmer for 5 minutes. This chicken is so good on its own, but it's going into the sauce now, which has taken this deep, gorgeous color. You know what? I forgot to remove those epazote leaves. I'm okay with it, but please remove it before you add the chicken if you don't want a string of herb in there. Oh, you know what? I can take it out now. Okay, I think I rescued like the entire thing. Okay, just make sure the chicken is well coated. I'm gonna let this go for another 5 minutes and just stir as needed. Finally, season it with salt to taste. I'm doing about 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. Filling is done. I'm gonna set it aside so it cools down completely. Plan on using around 45 corn husks to wrap the tamales, and I like to go through them and just pick the best looking ones. You may get a few holes in there, and that is fine. Like this huge one looks perfect for tamales. The holes are up here. They're not gonna interfere with the filling, so that is fine. But if you get a leaf that has a bunch of holes right in the center of the leaf, that is not going to work. So those just get set to the side. I'll use them for anything else, like covering the tamales at the end. But for wrapping, you do want to pick the best looking ones and just avoid the ones with a lot of dark spots. Submerge and soak completely in hot water for about 30 minutes. For the masa, we are going to need a large bowl to mix everything in and add in half a cup of pork lard. With a whisk, I'm gonna mix that in, making sure there's no lumps. This one's looking pretty good to start with, but it just has to be silky smooth. Complement that with 1 cup of avocado oil and just add it gradually as you mix it in. This is gonna give us such a well-balanced in flavor tamal because you do get the flavor from the pork lard, but then the mild flavor from the oil adds moisture and a neutral flavor. For the dry ingredients, I'm gonna be using 6 cups of instant corn masa harina. This is the same one that I use to make corn tortillas. Add 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and just mix that until it is well combined. I like to use my hands. You can use a whisk if you like, but it will allow us to know when to stop adding the liquid and when it needs a little bit more. So your hands are gonna be the greatest tool you have. Add half of the mixture into the lard. Okay, now add the remainder. Mix it until it is well combined and it gets this crumbly consistency. Take the 2 cups of the green salsa that we reserved and add them in. We are getting some of that goodness mixed into the dough, which is my favorite part. It's not just going to be in the filling, that flavor is going to be throughout the entire tamal. Time for that warm chicken broth. The amount is going to depend on the temperature of the broth itself and even the temperature of the room. That's about 1 cup. We'll see where that takes us. So we're gonna add it gradually and stop when we know we reached the right consistency. I can feel in real time how that masa soaks up the broth as soon as it hits it and we start mixing it in. It's a beautiful thing. It just rehydrates the whole thing. The consistency of the masa is going to be looser than I typically make it because I want to be able to spread it with a spoon so that I can make a thinner layer in that tamal. So it's going to be moist, spreadable, but not runny. Keep that in mind, very important. And it will take 3 to 4 cups of the broth. I covered the masa with a damp paper towel, that way it stays moist. As far as the corn husk, I went ahead, rinsed and drained them, then patted them completely dry. For that I used a kitchen towel, but we are ready to assemble these bad boys. Now look here. To make tamales, start by using the smooth side of the corn husk. For spreading the masa, I recommend a flexible spatula, but a flexible bench scraper will also get the job done. Spread a thin layer of masa covering about 2/3 of the husk and leaving some space on both sides and the top. Spoon in the cooled filling. I love packing it in, but be sure to leave enough room for the tamal to close. Now seal the edges of the masa, keep the husk ends together, fold and roll. Feel where the masa ends at the top and fold downward, making sure that flap stays under to keep the tamal closed at all times. As mentioned, I opted for a looser masa consistency because it allows me to achieve a thinner layer of masa, cutting down on those carbs per tamal. Did you know that in Mexico there are about 300 types of tamales, each with its own unique filling, masa thickness, and wrapping leaves? Tamales are just fantastic. But I'm curious, do you prefer tamales with a thicker masa layer, or do you like them all about that filling? Share your thoughts in the comments. We have more tamales than we have days in a month. That's a good thing. We can feast. Have a really good time with food and family. Okay, large steamer pot. There's a rack inside. I poured a generous amount of water. Just make sure it doesn't touch that rack. We don't want the water to get to those tamales. Line the rack with additional husks. Do the best that you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. And this is where you can use those husks that don't look really good, the ones that have holes or smaller in size, didn't work for the tamal wrapping. Place 3 tamales, which are going to be your base, in the form of a T shape, open side facing the center. Then arrange the remainder of the tamales all around wherever they fit best, making sure that open side is facing up. That way they stay nice and closed. Cover them with more corn husks. Make sure they're well enclosed. I did bring the water to a boil. I can actually hear it. I like to do this while I'm stacking the tamales. If you feel safer doing it afterwards, it's completely fine. I can see that steam coming up. Now bring to a gentle simmer over medium-low heat, cover the pot and begin timing. Steam the tamales for 60 to 90 minutes or until the masa does not taste raw anymore. I made sure the pot had enough water at all times, and these tamales look great. But I'm going to remove a tamal because I need to make sure they are completely done. The rest, keep them covered. And as for this one, we're gonna let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. Tamales are done when they release from the husk, hold their shape, and no longer taste like raw masa. Now turn off the heat and keep them snug by keeping the pot covered when not in use. Warm, cozy, and ready to devour. These tamales are so good. I already had a bite and they're unbelievable.
Oh man. Only 10 hours of recording.
Well, you know, tamales are a labor of love, but when you have to record them, it takes 2, 3 times the time.
Love.
But these are so good. What we're trying to achieve with these tamales is pack on that protein. Do a little bit of a thinner layer of masa to reduce the amount of carbs. And then we did some good amount of fiber as well.
This is also good.
Wow, So good. I know Nelson's gonna be digging into these for sure.
You bet.
He's a tamal lover. And if he knows it's got a little bit of nutrition in there, he'll go for it, right?
For sure.
All right.
Enjoy it during the holidays. Enjoy it all year round.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.